Mark, why are we doing a video blog then?
Wow, that's a good question. It was your idea, Tim.
It was actually.
It was. Well, basically, I've been thinking about doing blogs and all that kind of stuff, and I think I will. But you came up with the idea of doing it visually like this. I think that people are much more visual these days, and a lot of people like just spending a bit of time flipping through YouTube things and all that kind of thing. So people like yourself have said that I come out with the odd gem and that it would be worth recording it. So I'm taking your word for it, and here we go.
Okay, so what sort of things are you going to be talking about in these blogs then?
Well, I think I especially like to talk about what I would call the no-go areas of Christianity.
Okay, give us some examples then.
Well, some of them are obvious, like sex and like money,
Yeah.
but some are not so obvious, like the whole area of evangelism and so on, which has become a bit of a no-go area.
Okay, my preference would be for you to talk about sex and money, really. But, but let's go with evangelism then. So, you know, we don't want this to be a long preach, and you are known for not doing long preaches, which is good.
That's good.
But what's your feelings on evangelism then?
Well, I feel that a huge proportion of the church, a large section of the church, feel a failure at evangelism. Let's be honest. We've done street work, haven't we, Tim? But
We know that.
do we love it?
No.
Oh, not really. It's a lot easier if you stand behind a guitar, obviously, and it's a lot easier if you do it in someone else's town. That works really well. Yeah. And hate door knocking. My wife loves it. I hate it. Hate doing loads of things that are deemed as being evangelism. Most people are intimidated by this whole side of being a Christian, even being a witness. Many people years ago thought they'd be a witness at work, and 15 years ago they mentioned Jesus, and that didn't go down too well, and they've never had a chance since. So people feel powerless in this area, and they feel guilty, and in the end decide that they haven't got a ministry in this area, and blank it out, disassociate from it.
So you're saying that in some ways people excuse themselves from it because they might sort of think, oh, you know, I haven't got the gift of the evangelist, or I haven't got the gift.
That's right. Deep down they feel a failure in it, and they feel guilty about it. And it doesn't help that preachers like myself, we seem so confident, and we seem to be bold. We relate stories of how we've talked to people in the street and all of this kind of thing. And that's all very nice and should happen, as should campaigns happen where we set ourselves up to overtly evangelize. All those things should happen. Yeah. But what about the average Joe who feels quite intimidated by all of that and feels a failure in it?
Okay, so you've got people in work, you've got young people in college or schools.
Yeah.
You've got your mum, your single mum, all these people who are not your evangelists.
That's right.
They're not heading up these big campaigns.
Yeah.
So what do you say to them?
Well, basically, I want to set them free. First of all, we need to talk about it. That, yes, they actually do hate some of the things that we call evangelism, and they feel a failure at it. It's good to talk about that, because when things are in the light, then things can be solved. When they're in the dark, they're in darkness. They don't get solved. Sure. And one of the key revelations I believe that needs to be taught is that Jesus is in each one of us. And when we walk down the street, Jesus walks down the street. There was this guy called Engels. He came up with this scale of events that people would go through that would eventually lead them to Christ. So all sorts of things might happen in their life, and it's a process, but they'll come to a point where they come to Jesus. One of the most crucial points in that process is meeting a Christian. So straight away, once you get a revelation of this, you begin to understand every time someone meets me, they meet Jesus. That I am one of the most important events in their life every time they meet me. And if you get a bit of faith for that and you actually believe it, it actually happens more and more in your life.
Okay, so this carrying of Jesus. So obviously for you, this is. I mean, give me an example where it's happened for you in an ordinary situation.
Well, one time I was just in the car park and a builder walked through and I just said, "Hi, how you doing? And how's your family?" And I was just nice to him. And I walked away feeling Jesus was nice to him. This has an effect on his life. I mean, I am fairly bold as a Christian, but it's come through working this through. I used to be a real chicken. And I remember one time I walked into the local spa and they were doing the lottery thing, and whatever you feel about the lottery, I was brought up not to gamble, so I could never do the lottery because I feel like I was disobeying my mum.
Okay, so you went in the shop.
Yeah.
And what happened?
Well, I basically just piped up, "Oh, I'm a lottery virgin." They all know who I am, you know, preacher boy from down the road, and so they they were all sort of like, "Ooh," he said the word virgin. I didn't really preach or anything. I didn't give any great espousal, or anything like that. I just said that, and I left more questions in their hearts than I gave answers. But I think as Christians, we are consumed with the idea that we have to give answers all the time, when the reality is that people need to follow a journey, so therefore they need questions in their heart. So it's not often it's not how much you say. Sometimes it's just leaving a question like Jesus did. What was that about?
Do you know the funny one I remember with you is remember you used to drive the big white van?
Yeah.
And I remember you talking about letting people through,
Yeah.
because I am the world's worst when it comes to like driving, letting people in. I'm fine letting people in, but when they don't say thank you, that's it.
Yeah, that's terrible, isn't it?
Now, tell us about the white van.
Well,
you were a white van man once.
I was a white van man. It used to be a riot van.
Yeah.
And
Right.
they took the mesh off the front before they sold it. But basically, it was a police riot van. And I used to get all our kids' bikes in the back. It was a mobile shed.
Yeah.
And everywhere we went, people recognised it.
Yeah.
And so I felt that I ought to be quite benevolent to people, and
when you're driving.
Yeah, and let them through, and I felt that this was quite a good witness.
What, the sort of just letting people through would actually...
Yes.
Well, why would that...
Well, because they were just encountering Jesus. Yeah. They were encountering me, so therefore they're encountering Jesus in me. And it just becomes a lot of fun being a witness. Yeah. And it becomes doable.
I see. So it's a bit like there's this big guy in a white van.
Yeah.
So how old are you? Yeah, how tall are you? 6'5".
Yeah, 6'4".
And you're letting people through all the time, and it's leaving them with the question: hang on, why's this guy?
Why does this guy do that?
Yeah.
Why is a guy so nice in a car?
Sure.
In a vehicle, and it does leave a question mark in people's lives. Sure. And it's a lot of fun. It takes the angst out of being a witness. Just being so convinced that everything you do, Jesus is in you while you're doing it. Sure. And it's really doable. It's available to all.
That's some interesting things to think about there. I like this idea of leaving people with more questions than answers, because we do have this desire. It's like we've got to give people the answers, haven't we?
Yeah. I mean, it's not a very likeable trait. I don't know about you, but do you get on well with people who are always right? It's a bit of an off-putting thing. If you want to be attractive, don't always be right, but actually be interested in what other people have to say. And as I often say, being right is overrated. Yeah,
sure. Lots to think about there, Mark. Thanks very much.
Thank you.